What's up friends, Nathan B Tech here. We're back here for another video. I've been doing some thinking and regarding foldable devices in the United States, and when I say foldable I don't mean flip style, I mean hot dog style, it being the only two options that we currently have would be Pixel with the 10 Pro Fold series and Samsung with the Z Fold 7 series. We're currently waiting for OnePlus to hopefully come back from their hiatus and release a new foldable, but until then, these are our two options that we have left. So, that being said, I did want to do a comparison between the two and do a hot take to see which one's best for you. So without further ado, let's do what I do and get into the video. So firstly, we are going to be covering durability. When it comes to the Pixel 10 Pro Fold did do some meaningful upgrades and advocate their focus into durability. Being the first IP68 water and dust resistant device foldable in the world, you should have more peace of mind when walking around. That's been one of the key factors that have been holding a lot of people away from foldables. It's just the lack of dust resistance, especially for a lot of people that live on the coast, you know, work in certain environments, etc. You don't want to spend $2,000 on a device and then it kind of being broke by something as small as a grain of salt in your pocket. It's one thing that has always been a concern when purchasing a foldable device, and it is nice to see that Google has finally overcame that issue. I'll be honest with you guys, I wasn't expecting Google to be the first manufacturer out of everybody. They're typically not the strongest when it comes to prowess in the hardware sector. However, they certainly surprised me, that's for sure. However, Samsung is no slouch. They've been doing this for 7 years and it shows in the pudding, right? So they do have the Ingress IP48 water and dust resistant rating, which is still going to be great for everyday tasks and then some. Not every day do you go to the beach, but if you do, or you're around those type of areas, whether it be dust, grain, anything in general, this device should still hold up. It's just something you have to be wary of. For example, I was being super careful at the beach and somehow I guess I had sand in my pockets and the sand got in the hinge and the sound that it made was terrifying, and I was contemplating if I was going to break my device right then and there. Just by doing this small gesture, the whole device was cracking and it did not sound well. But it seems like sand did find its way out of the device because it's no longer making that noise anymore. Like I said, it's just a matter of where you live, right? But at the end of the day, I'm still going to give the point to Google just because they have that guaranteed rating of ingress protection on an IP64, being the first IP64 water and dust resistant foldable device. So props to Google, you get the first point. Secondly, when it comes to design, this is where things are going to take a turn, right? Google, for the most part, stuck to the same design that they did last year. And if it ain't broke, don't fix it, right? It's a beautiful phone and it's great. They shrunk the bezel so you do get a millimeter larger screen on that cover display. The only thing with the design is it can be a little controversial if you have OCD, because obviously one corner is, let's see if I can show you guys. One corner is a little crooked, and that's kind of the first thing that catches everyone's eyes. But that being said, it is still going to be quite a bit heavier than last year's model due to the magnets in there for pixel snap. So it is weighing 258 grams. Now, if you compare that to the Samsung, which is beautiful, it is 215 grams. It feels different. And part of that's going to come down to the magnets, right? The Pixel Snap magnets is a great feature and I will gladly sacrifice weight for that. However, the other thing is going to be the battery. The battery is much, much larger in the Pixel Pro Fold. And I think that's where you're going to get the contribution of more weight. And I will always trade weight for batteries. But if weight is a concern, and I know there is a lot of people that want a lighter, thinner, foldable device, that is completely understandable. Samsung is going to take the cake and run with it. Like we said, it's 215 grams compared to 258, and it's going to be 8.9 millimeters thin. When you compare that to the Pixel 10 Pro Fold, it's going to be 10.8 millimeters thin. Honestly, it's such a small difference. I don't even like showing it. It's there, it's noticeable, and you can feel it. However, I mean, it's a couple cards. It's a penny thicker, right? If you're planning to put a case on it, then 100% Z Fold, right? I get that. But if you're not, it's such a minor difference between the two. I don't think it's something you should complain about. But that being said, Samsung is innovating and making a thinner device. It is the thinnest foldable device in the world currently, and the weight is a good feeling, right? Like I said, the battery is much bigger in the Pixel 10 Pro Fold. However, you know, if we're focusing on what consumers want a lighter, thinner device. That being said, when it does come to design, I am going to give Samsung the point just because they've widened the cover display. This blue is beautiful, I'm not gonna lie, but it is lighter and it is the thinnest phone in the world. So that's got a whole, you know, moniker of itself, right? So Samsung will get that 1 point. When it comes to performance, this is where things are going to shake up, right? Tensor G5, interesting chip. However, when it comes to raw performance, it does not win. And currently there is an issue with the GPU on this chip, and it is causing a lot of problems, where even I have better performance on my Pixel 9 than I do on my Pixel 10. When it comes to gaming, I can get 120 Hertz on my Pixel 9. Until they update these drivers, which hopefully they will do, I don't know if it's going to solve the problem, but I am currently capped out at 60 frames per second on a $2,000 device. So, I mean, it's a no-brainer. If you're looking for raw power, if you're planning to game on these devices, which if you are planning to game, I have no qualms against you, because who doesn't want to game on an 8-inch display that unfolds in your pocket? That is completely reasonable. Samsung takes the cake. It's got the Snapdragon Elite processor. It is just superior. It is about over 40% faster. When it comes to the GPU, it is scary faster. That's not necessarily saying that this thing is ahead of everything. It's just saying how bad the GPU on this is. And that's not Pixel's intent. They weren't going for a gaming device. We completely understand that. Their focus is AI. However, when it does come to spending $2,000, you want everything in your device. Until they update those drivers, I have no issues with my Pixel until it comes to gaming. But until they update those drivers and we see differences and we see improvements in the performance, it was going to be Samsung no matter what. I mean, the AI applications for doing AI tasks faster is great, but we've not seen any AI applications that utilize that processing speed to make it useful in a day-to-day usage. And maybe it'll come one day, right? But until then, Samsung is going to get the point 100% there. Now, when it comes to the battery, I do want to jump back on that. The Pixel 10 Pro Fold has a 5015 milliamp power battery. It is much bigger than the 4400 milliamp power battery in the Samsung. Samsung does run a little bit faster. It has some higher clock frequencies on the CPU. So you do lose speed, but you gain it back in efficiency, which is interesting to say. So if you're not planning to game on your device, then you won't notice a difference between these two devices. Unless you're exporting videos or gaming, the Pixel 10 Pro is still an amazing device. And the battery will only benefit you. I've noticed how much longer this thing lasts, and I've never had this much battery on a foldable, and this is great, yet alone a Pixel. And when it comes to the thermals, they have improved significantly. The Pixel Pro Fold 10 series in general, it does not overheat. At least I have not been able to get it to do so. And that's me running Android Auto while it's in my pocket in a hot car. It has not burned my pocket not once, and that is impressive. So when it comes to battery, I am going to give it to the Pixel 10 Pro Fold. However, going back to it, Samsung has a lighter style, and the battery is not too far off. It could be about an hour and a half difference of more battery life on this device, on the Pixel, but it's not the end of the world. So it still gives you all day battery life and still a great phone. But when it comes to just raw performance in terms of battery, Pixel is going to get that. Now going into cameras, on paper, Samsung has a 200 megapixel sensor on this device versus a 48 megapixel sensor that was reused from last year's phone on this device. It sounds better on the Samsung, and you would expect it to be better. However, when you do the post-processing after the photo, I've actually noticed more detailed results on the Pixel 10 Pro Fold. And here's these examples right here. Bear in mind, these are fully zoomed in, and the Google can only do up to 20 times zoom versus the Samsung can do up to 30 times zoom. However, with that advantage, the Samsung was still not able to do the post-processing better than what the Google Pixel was able to do. In particular scenarios, the Samsung really likes to over process, I would say, and kind of sharpen things to where it's not attractive. And here's some prairie dogs that I took the photo of, and you can see how over sharpened Samsung did on these prairie dogs. Not only that, but with the grains of grass. Honestly, I prefer the more natural look of it versus the over sharpened version of it that Samsung likes to do to compensate for the zoom. It just looks kind of rough on the Samsung, and even on the pattern recognition on the text and the straight lines, it still just came out sharper on the Pixel. So that's just going back to what I'm saying regarding the 200 megapixel versus the 48. I'm seeing better photos on the 48 megapixel camera with Google's post-processing. So take that in mind when deciding to purchase these devices. I've not seen anyone else talk about it online. Not only that, but like if you look, Samsung does have more warmer colors versus Google likes to go for a cooler approach. And for the most part, I don't mind either or, but I think the Google Pixel does look a little bit more natural, and it looks good until we come into night photography. That's where the Samsung does take the cake. In these night photos, you know, I had plenty of signage to take photos of, and you can see, like, whether it's on the neons or on that, the Google definitely overexposed on those neon colors and wasn't able to put as much detail on the surrounding areas. The Samsung's typically just came out better for nighttime. That wasn't just a hiccup. I mean, the Samsung significantly was doing better in every night photo when it came to that high dynamic range. And here's a really good photo. For example, this was a skeleton, you know, sitting outside, and you can see how overexposed the Pixel took the photo, right? And there's no high dynamic range. Like, you can barely see the skeleton's ribs here, versus on the Samsung, not only is the sky brighter, it picked that up, but the ribs came out much better. The detail in the skeleton's much better. The color saturation, you can actually see that there's some orange in there versus it just looking white on the Pixel. So that being said, I mean, the way I would like to describe it is, if it's during the day, I kind of give the edge to the Pixel because of that post-processing. But when it comes to nighttime photography, the Samsung is going to be much better. Ultimately though, if you can take good photos during the day and great photos during the night versus you can take great photos during the day and photos during the night, I'd still have to give Samsung the edge. So you will get the point there for the night photography. Now going into software, that's where things are going to become more biased depending on what device you've had previously. They're both going to be running Android 16, which is the latest and greatest, and they're both going to get 7 years of software support and 7 years of security updates. So you can't go wrong with either or. It's just going to come down to whether you like the Material U3 Expressive or Samsung's One UI 8.0. Those are two completely different lanes in the road, and you have to pick one. I personally prefer Google applications, and I don't like the Samsung duplicates that are stuck on my device, and sometimes they can interfere with other systems if you don't set them all completely to one. So that's just my personal preference. Either way, they're both great. Samsung's came a long way in One UI and have made it much more smooth. The best way I could describe it is Samsung is going to be a smooth, like they're just putting all of their points into smoothness, versus Pixel is more poppy and bubbly, hence expressive, right? Things are, the haptics, everything's kind of vibrating, notifications, swiping away. They have a sticky feel to it. The buttons are playful. The animations are jumpy. Everything's just a little bit more expressive, hence Material 3 Expressive. Samsung's approach is very, very smooth no matter what. It's just gonna be smooth. Everything's gonna be smooth and smooth like butter, right? So whichever your preference is, like I said, you can't go wrong either way. So tallying it all up, that's going to give Samsung 4 points and Pixel 2 points. And that is not biased. I rock this as my main driver. I love Pixel. However, if I'm going to recommend you a device based off of what you're looking for and you want the best and the fastest and the best camera, by all means, do what you got to do. I typically just choose it based off of Material 3 Expressive. That's my whole, get. But if you're looking for the best hardware, Samsung definitely has Pixel beat. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure to drop a big fat like and subscribe. Let me know in the comment section down below if I can do anything to improve the video for you. But until then, I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.